All right, hi everyone. Thank you for joining me for this stream. I've had early access to Notion's file uploads API for a little while now, and I'm really excited to share what you can do with it. There's so many things that could potentially be made quite a lot easier, and also some really cool use cases like the one that I'm going to share today that are going to be unlocked by this new capability. If you're like me, you've probably come across situations in the past where you've wanted to be able to mass upload files into Notion, which has been a pretty slow process up until now. Maybe you've wanted to be able to set page icons based on the status of your task, for example, using an automation. And thanks to Notion's webhook functionality and now this update, that is a lot easier as well. But one of the really cool things that has been on my mind lately has been sort of OpenAI's obviously image generation capabilities. We all saw what happened when they released their new model for image generation. And for people who are doing things like scheduling their social media posts in Notion, or needing to create mock-ups, or just creating a sort of food tracker, maybe if you're sort of creating meal plans and things in Notion, it's really nice now to be able to connect your Notion database to an automation that uses that OpenAI image generation model to then generate images for the thing that you have just added to your Notion database and save that image in Notion using this new upload functionality that we now have access to. So that's what I'm going to show you how to set up today. If you have any questions at all, feel free to add them to the chat, obviously. There is a link to this template in the description for the video. And in the template, I've included a link, or I've included a file for the make scenario blueprint, which I'm going to show you how to set up and obviously explain today as well. So those are the main things you need. You'll need a Notion account, obviously, a Make account, and I've included a sign up link for Make in the description too, and an OpenAI account with access to OpenAI's API. And then once you've downloaded the template, obviously you can just set up the Make scenario from scratch. But if you want to sort of speed up the process, you can use the blueprint that's just here. It's a little bit fiddly to create a make automation that does handle this process of uploading files into Notion, because it's a multi-step process and you're using some sort of raw HTTP steps rather than a sort of pre-built step that OpenAI has created for file uploads for Notion at this point anyway. Hopefully they'll add their own very soon. So yeah, if you download the blueprint, that can speed up the process for you a little bit, and then maybe configure the other steps as well. But I'll walk you through the whole process anyway, and you can see how you get on. Notion has obviously updated their API reference as well, with some more details about file uploads. So where's the best page to go to see the details about that? This one looks like it'll be a pretty good step-by-step guide. Yeah, this is going to be the guide that we basically follow during this stream. I'll put a link to that at the top of the template as well. So if you get stuck at all, hopefully that'll help answer some questions too. And I think that's everything you need to know at this stage. So we might as well get stuck straight in. So first of all, I've created this foods database in Notion to begin with. It's a very simple database. We have a name property, so that's your title property, an image property to store our newly generated images in, and then we also have this formula property here, which contains our prompt that is going to be sent to our make automation and then to OpenAI to generate the image. Basically, the way this end-to-end process works is when we create a page in this database, that is going to trigger an automation here, which will send the prompt property, the contents of the prompt property, to our make automation, along with the page ID and a few other details, obviously, in make, and then we will send that prompt straight to OpenAI to generate the image, and then we'll go through the file upload process, which will upload the image that we just generated back into this image property here in our page. If we then want to regenerate that image because we didn't like the result that we got to begin with, or if you just wanted to kickstart the automation from here rather than by adding a new page to the database, you can click this button as well, and that will trigger the same process, which will all work in exactly the same way. So when it comes to the prompt property here, all this is a simple sort of string which just sort of contains the name property, which is this reference here, as part of the prompt. So that sort of combines all of this content into a single sentence. So you're creating an illustration of an apple, use a vibrant cartoon style, so obviously if you want to customize that prompt, you can just edit it there. Potentially you could store these prompts in a text property, and then you'd be able to customize them for each different page that you create. If you did that, you would want to customize the trigger for the automation, so that the automation is triggered when the prompt is edited, potentially, or you might just want to use this button to trigger the automation instead when you know everything's created for the page and you're ready to trigger the automation. But if you just want to generate a consistent style of image for all of the entries in your database, and you want to be able to easily sort of edit the prompt that you're going to use for every item, then using a formula property to store the prompt is really nice because it allows you to make the change to the prompt globally and then just include these sort of merge fields in order to add that sort of unique content for each page to the prompt. So once you've got your database set up, I'll show you how to create this button and sort of configure this button in a minute. You will first need to create your automation in Make, starting with a webhook trigger. So it's very simple to just add a custom webhook step to your Make automation as the first step in the scenario, and then all you need to do is copy your webhook address to your clipboard. Once you've got that, if we go back into Notion here, we can just set up our automation. So at the moment, I've got this set up so that if the name of the page is edited, that will trigger the automation. Reason I've done that rather than just triggering the automation when the page is added is we might not enter the name of our page straight away, and without that, we're not going to know which type of content the automation should create with OpenAI. The way name is edited works is when you're sort of customizing, this content here, you can leave your cursor in this box for as long as you like without triggering an automation, and it's only when you hit enter or return that that automation will actually be triggered, so you don't have to worry about that. And then all we're doing is adding a send webhook step. We need to paste our make webhook URL into that field right there, and then you could select all existing properties to send to the automation, or if you want to keep things a little bit neat and tidy, just select prompt from here, because ultimately the prompt is the only piece of information that we need to send to our make automation. Then make sure your automation is switched on and click done. And that's that. We can test this then by running this module only. And then if we add a new page maybe for a cactus, for argument's sake, we should see that page's details be sent to our webhook in just a second by the Notion automation that we just created there. And there we go. All right, we'll stop the automation there. So this is what you can expect to see in Make when you've sent an update to Make. Basically, you'll have some details about the automation itself here, which we don't need in this instance. And then we have the details about the page which the update came from. So key details that we need are the ID of the page, and in the properties, obviously the prompt. So now that we've got that content, we can add a generate an image step to our make automation. You'll need to create an OpenAI connection for this. It's pretty simple to do, obviously, once you have an OpenAI account. When it comes to the model, I've selected DALL-E 3 here, which is obviously the older image generation model. I would like to be using GPT Image 1, which is the new model that created all of those cool images that we saw on social media recently. You need to do identity verification for your organization with OpenAI for that. And they have some strange restrictions in place which are not documented, which for whatever reason has meant that I couldn't do that verification. And so I'm stuck with DALL-E 3 at the moment. I think they're just limiting access to that API to maybe sort of more active accounts or organizations to begin with as a precaution. And so hopefully they'll open up the API to everyone and make that verification process work seamlessly very soon. In the meantime, you can still generate some perfectly good images with DALL-E 3. They just won't be quite as sophisticated as the ones that you'd create with the new model. The prompt then is just going to be the prompt from our data object. If we go into properties, prompt, formula, and then string, that's the field that we want to reference there. Make sure that prompt is less than 4,000 characters long. You could trim it in Make here if you weren't sure about that, but obviously you can also just set the formula to make sure that it's less than 4,000 characters long. And once OpenAI has generated your image, you will see this type of content in the response. There's actually a revised prompt that I'm not sure if that's a suggestion or that's what they actually used. But the content that we want here is the URL, which contains our image. So we can actually open that URL in our browser and just see what that looks like. We have a beautiful image of a fish there, slightly chaotic energy, but we can work with that. And so now we just need to download the image from that URL that OpenAI have given us for the image. So that's that one there. This is actually an array, but or a list of responses potentially, a list of bits of data content, but it's always just going to be the first URL that we want here, so we can just reference it like that, which inserts that for you. Don't need to worry about these other settings. You do want to evaluate these other states as errors. I think that'll be switched on for you by default now in Make. It didn't used to be, which was a bit of a pain. But yeah, just make sure that's switched on, or if it's not, switch on advanced settings, and then you'll have access to this setting here. I've added break steps for all of these API requests, except for this one actually. I probably should just add a break step for that too, so that if there's any issues when Make goes to process my request, Make will handle that issue and retry the request after a minute a few times by default. You need to switch on allow storing of incomplete executions in order for that functionality to work. And then if you wanted to add that break step manually, you can right click on the step, add error handler, choose break there, and then enter the number of times that the request should be, or the sort of step should be retried, and how long you want to wait in between those retries, like that. We can auto align that to make that look a little bit neater, and that's basically all you need to do there. Other option is to just have, maybe to ignore errors in this automation, and if something goes wrong and you don't receive the image within 30 seconds, then you can just send a new request using the button in the database, which is sometimes a little bit quicker, especially if the error is not actually fixable by retrying it, but it's up to you. Once we've got our URL, we're downloading it, and then we're creating a file upload. So this is the first step in the new process that Notion has set up. I'm using the make an API call step that Make makes available for us for Notion, because there is no dedicated file upload step here at the moment. Again, I expect that's something that Make will add, so that hopefully, rather than this being a 3-step process, it turns into a 1-step process, but we'll have to wait and see. In the meantime, you just need to configure that API request manually. So the path for creating a file upload is this one, Notion version. This is the latest version of the API. I don't think they've updated it today. And then the method is post. You can leave the body empty with an empty set of curly braces in there. And that's basically all you need. So to show you the documentation about that, basically what we're doing there is creating a file upload object, which is the first step in the process. Once we've got that file upload object, we are uploading our file to that object, and then we're attaching the file that's been uploaded to our Notion page. So those are the 3 steps that have the 3 steps in my Make automation just here. Upload file looks like this. It's a little bit more complex because we're having to use the generic HTTP request step that Make gives us. For this part, you will need, I forgot to mention, an integration token, an internal integration token, or an access token, I think Notion are calling it now. So if we go to My Integrations, we can go here. You will need to go to notion.so/profile/integrations to set one of these up to use as part of this automation. I don't think you can just use an OAuth access token for this process, but assuming you just create an integration from here, all you need to do is set it up with a generic set of permissions. I've actually just given this integration all of the permissions that you could potentially ever need, as a sort of, it's just a habit of mine basically. But it just needs to be able to read, update, and insert content. Basically, it doesn't actually need access to comments or user details. Once you've done that, you can copy your internal integration secret, is the term, from here. And then when you go to set up your connection with Notion, if we just add a new step to this automation so you can see, we will need to add a internal connection, and then you can paste in your internal integration token, as Make is calling it, just here. So yeah, that will save it in Make, and then you can use it in the subsequent steps. Because you're doing that in a Notion specific step here though, you will also need to use that same internal integration token when you come to use the HTTP request here. So you'll need to add that API key as a credential in the header, and the format for the content, the format for the key here would be bearer, and then your internal integration secret. So that's going to be this. I think it'll be NTN, something like that now. You need to include the bearer piece there because the Notion API is expecting that to be part of the key. And then this key here, I believe the parameter name would just be authorization. Yeah, it would just be authorization. So that's all you need there as your credential. Then again, we're evaluating all status as errors, except for 200 and 300 status code responses. URL is going to be the URL that was given to us from this step here. You could actually produce it yourself because it's just the URL that's documented. URL is documented here, plus the ID of the upload, plus /send. But you might as well use the URL that Notion give you just to make your life a little bit easier. So upload URL, we're posting to create new content. Notion version header needs to be there. And then the body type here is going to be multi-part form data, which is not a type of content that I work with very often, but it's fairly straightforward once you get the hang of it. Field type needs to be file, key needs to be file as well. We are referencing the content from our getter file step, so basically the file that we downloaded here, and then we're passing the response from the API request. Once we've done that, we can again make an API call to this URL now, so to the same endpoint that you'd be using to update any page in Notion, plus the ID of the page that we sent the request from. So that's the page that we triggered the automation from here. Notion version again, we're patching this time to update the page, and then our body will look something like this, where we have properties, the name of the property, type is going to be files, and then your content is going to look like this, basically, with a name which you could set dynamically. If you wanted to set that to the name of the page, for example, you would need to send that to the webhook as part of the update content. So you'd want to include it in the list of properties here. I've just used image because it's not really visible in Notion anyway, so it doesn't matter much unless you're going to download the files from Notion later on. And so once you've done all that, if we run this automation again, and this time let's call that apples instead. We're going to add the first food item to our database that we actually want to create an image for. So that's going to send our content again to this webhook. OpenAI is going to do its thing and generate an image for us. We're going to download that file. We're going to create a file upload, and we are going to get an error because Notion doesn't have access to this page at the moment. So I just need to use that. So if we go to the connections menu and add a connection to Make just there, and also to our test file uploads integration. There we go. We need to give them both access to the contents of this page, of course. So let's try that again, and this time we can just use Apple as our prompt. The other really important detail to mention here is when we're using our internal integration secret, we need to use the same secret obviously for all of these steps. Otherwise you will find that in this step, for example, you can't access the file upload that was created in this step. So that called me out in the beginning. Nice and easy to configure once you know that that could be an issue though. And this time that was successful. So there we go. We now have a beautiful cartoon animal. Now that that is working, we can also configure this button. So if we just copy our webhook URL again, and we customize this property and edit the automation, I'm going to replace the example URL with our webhook URL for make. And this automation obviously is set up in exactly the same way as the automation on the foods database. Only difference is that the trigger is button being clicked rather than the name property being edited. And so we can use that button to trigger our automation directly. Let's see if that feeds through. I might have clicked that a little bit too soon, so let's try that again. There we go. We can use this to create brand new images or to regenerate images if we don't like the first result. And now we have an avocado. We don't have to, okay, that had already triggered the automation before, and now it's gonna regenerate that image for us in just a second. We can trigger this automation for more than one item at once. You will potentially run into Notion's API limits. Okay, I definitely preferred the first result there, but never mind. You will run into Notion's API limits, which are sending up to 3 requests a second if you try and generate too many images at once. But for this sort of thing, hopefully that won't be an issue. So we can just click on this button to generate 3 more images now. And that's basically it. So that's all you need to do to set up the entire sort of end-to-end automation. Really cool way to sort of generate, content for social media posts, as I said, mock-ups, visualizations for your content, whatever it is that you need. Hopefully OpenAI open up their API a little bit more and make that a little bit more accessible very soon, so we can use the new models, or maybe you'll be more successful with the verification. Perhaps they just didn't like the way I looked when I tried to do it. So yeah, that's something to look out for. And in the meantime, please feel free to ask questions about any aspect of the automation, or how the new API works in the comments. And stick around. I will be sharing lots more automations like this, and obviously sharing sort of updates on new Notion features and anything else that comes to mind on this channel on a regular basis. So stick around, and I will see you soon.